What's up guys? Welcome to AnimeKouhai. If you'd like to help me out, please hit the like button and subscribe to my channel.
But I doubt he'll have the chance to explain himself in court.
Hinata let out a heavy sigh as she thought.
Reiner, that bastard. How dare he hold a grudge against Hinata-sama just because he was humiliated at the council meeting?
Fritz, another captain present, complained angrily. According to Arnaud's explanation, Reiner, who had been intimidated by Hinata at the council meeting and had ended up incarcerated, was determined to clear his name. He planned to defeat Hinata publicly to do so. It was a ridiculous story, a crime committed out of personal resentment. However, the root of the problem ran deep. Reiner took drastic measures to compensate for his mistake. This was the general understanding, but there was no way to prove it. The whole situation was a setup, and the evidence seemed to have been destroyed. There was a possibility of getting other countries' representatives to testify, but that was only feasible during peacetime. In such an emergency, endangering the senators was not an option, and the public wouldn't believe anything Hinata and her team said anyway. Unfortunately, Prince Elric was very popular in this country, making it clear who the people would believe.
Hinata-sama has never had a good reputation,
Fritz quipped, and Arnaud gave a slight nod. Glaring at the two, Hinata shifted the conversation.
I guess we're on the back burner.
But even so, I never imagined he would kill his own father, the king. Blaming Hinata-sama for it is just ludicrous.
Hinata's sentiment was echoed by Arnaud. Prince Elric and Reiner's intentions were transparent. They aimed to exploit the chaos to erase their blunders and sins. Rather than solely seeking revenge on Hinata, they might be using this as a strategic move against other nations. They might believe that by defeating Hinata, the strongest in the Western nations, they could silence protests from other countries.
But I don't understand. I don't think Reiner was capable enough to assassinate the king.
From Hinata's perspective, Reiner wasn't weak, but he wasn't particularly strong either. He was on par with an over-rank adventurer. A large country like Ingratia should have had several knights who could rival Reiner. Moreover, the magical inquisitors present at the council meeting should have been able to overpower Reiner. How this tragedy succeeded puzzled her. The answer came from Cardinal Nicolaus, who arrived to see Hinata.
Apparently, the magical inquisitors have all been killed. We had information that they were conducting a suspicious experiment in the underground of this place, but it seems that the experimental entities have gone out of control.
Nicolaus, huh?
I have a message from Rumina-sama, but I decided to investigate while I was here.
Nicolaus replied, ever competent. He was like a loyal dog eager for Hinata's praise. Merciless to everyone but Hinata, he was also very good at maintaining appearances. Nicolaus always wore a warm expression and was well liked by his followers. However, those who knew his true nature avoided him. In fact, Arnaud and Fritz kept a low profile, avoiding eye contact with Nicolaus. Ignoring these outsiders, Nicolaus began brewing tea. He was diligent and earned points this way. He prepared a cup for Testarossa, who looked satisfied after a sip. This indicated a very high standard, proving that Nicolaus was no ordinary person. Hinata also sipped her tea and collected her thoughts.
What if, rather than taking advantage of the chaos, this whole mess is exactly what Elric and the others want?
But those are monsters running rampant in the city, aren't they?
That's the first strange thing. How could a monster break into the royal capital protected by the city barriers? And their strength is also peculiar, isn't it?
The monsters reported were not singular but numerous, rampaging all over the capital with no clear purpose. They were destroying anything in their path and had ultraspeed regeneration, healing their wounds immediately. Their combat ability surpassed that of a holy knight. Fortunately, they seemed to be of low intelligence, and the knights were setting up decoys to minimize damage. Judging it too dangerous to confront them individually, soldiers were ordered to stay back for now. Hinata was prepared to go into battle if needed, but a new problem had arisen. Testarossa joined the conversation.
On that note, it seems some of my subordinates have been defeated. They were under strict orders to retreat before dying, so I didn't get much information.
She didn't have much but shared what she knew. Testarossa's subordinates were Devil Chevaliers, all special A rank with existence values over 100,000. It was no surprise that the magical inquisitors were no match for such powerful beings.
Apparently, the experimental subjects were incarnated by angels.
What does that mean?
The ones that failed to incarnate are the monsters rampaging now, and those who still have their egos intact.
The foe who had bested the Devil Chevaliers, Testarossa was certain it was one of Michael's agents. After hearing Testarossa's account, Hinata tapped her fingers on the desk thoughtfully. The only Holy Knight captains present were Arnaud and Fritz. Leonard, the second in command, was managing the situation with Bacchus and Rites. Thanks to their intense training in the labyrinth, even the regular Holy Knights had become formidable fighters. In fact, the captains were now powerful enough to defeat enemies as strong as Clayman on their own. However, facing an experimental fusion of magical inquisitors and angelic power head-on would be perilous. And with Michael's presence looming in the background, Hinata decided they should not engage recklessly.
Nikolaus, you mentioned a message from Ruminez?
Yes, she says it's not urgent, but she can't send reinforcements.
So, there are other threats.
Ruminez would never abandon Hinata. Therefore, if she couldn't send reinforcements, it meant other dangers were likely nearby. Given this, they would have to defend the royal capital with their current forces.
This is a tough situation.
That was Hinata's assessment. Despite the Holy Knight's enhanced abilities, facing a clearly superior enemy was a daunting task. Additionally, the monsters had absorbed angelic power and become light attribute. The Holy Purification Barrier, effective against typical monsters, would be useless.
What should we do? Our usual tactics won't work.
That's true. It would be one thing if it were just the monsters, but there's also Reiner and his group.
That Reiner fellow, he's probably a successful experiment.
Testarossa remarked, but only Hinata and Nikolaus grasped her meaning.
What do you mean by that?
Arnaud asked, puzzled.
I tell you to think for yourself, but we don't have much time. If Reiner was on death row, it wouldn't be surprising if he was used in an experiment, right?
I see, so it's likely he's absorbed angelic power.
Arnaud and Fritz realized, their faces paling simultaneously.
It's not a possibility. It's a certainty.
Testarossa declared bluntly. Given the situation, it was clear the Holy Knight Order couldn't handle this alone. Cooperation with Testarossa's forces would be essential.
So, what's your plan?
Testarossa asked, and Hinata responded decisively.
I'm sure it's what the enemy wants, but we'll have to confront them for an explanation.
Prince Elric accused Hinata of being a kingslayer. There was no reason for her to do such a thing, and she had a solid alibi, being at the World Conference. However, in the current chaos, the people might believe otherwise. The citizens of Ingratia, used to peace, were now facing an unexpected crisis. If Hinata were killed, all accusations against her would be believed. In that case, fleeing was one option.
Why not just flee to Rabirius instead of charging out there? The Holy Church in the capital has a transport team, and we can use a transfer spell from the suburbs. If Hinata-sama is safe, we can explain everything later, right?
Cardinal Nikolaus's suggestion made sense, and Hinata acknowledged it. However, she couldn't simply agree.
That's not feasible. We might escape, but we can't evacuate the conference attendees. If they become hostages, our options will be limited.
Everyone understood the gravity of her words.
Exactly. And let's remember, the real enemy isn't here. What happens if the army of angels attacks and key national figures are killed?
Nikolaus frowned, understanding the implications.
You're right. If that happens, cooperation between nations will collapse. No country would trust the kingdom of Ingratia.
Right, without trust, we can't unite against the angels.
Fritz muttered, now convinced. The conclusion was clear. They had to follow Hinata's lead. Based on her principles, Hinata decided to do what she could now. She wasn't trying to save everyone, but if someone could be saved, she would act. This approach would build trust.
Well, that's settled. Let's assign our roles.
Hinata declared she would confront Reiner. Testarossa agreed.
I'll join you. As for the monsters.
Before she could finish, Arnaud and Fritz, stiff with determination, interrupted.
We don't need Testarossa Dano's help. Leave the monsters to us.
If they're mindless and unintelligent, we can handle them. The light attribute is a challenge, but we've trained in the labyrinth. We'll show you our strength.
Hinata frowned at their eagerness.
Why are they so concerned about Testarossa Dono?
She suspected they wanted to impress the beautiful woman, but the reality was different. They were genuinely afraid of Testarossa. Failing here would brand them as useless. This could jeopardize their special labyrinth training. Moreover, Testarossa had many supporters, not just in the labyrinth but also among parliament members. Failing her could weaken their influence. Testarossa's power had grown, but Hinata, uninterested in politics, was unaware. For Testarossa, this was crucial. Despite Rimaru's orders to ensure the World Conference's success, she had let the enemy invade and couldn't prevent the capital's destruction. Prioritizing human lives was no excuse. Behind her smile, she burned with rage. Therefore, she approved Arnaud and the others' plan.
In that case, proceed. I'll lend you some of my subordinates to support your unit.
She assisted Arnaud and the others, preparing for her move. She left the command to them, tasked with restoring the capital's security. Meanwhile, she planned to confront the mastermind. Thus, roles were assigned.
Let's go now. We need to punish those who have foolishly acted during this emergency.
Hinata stated icily. Her plan was to eliminate Reiner to clear her own name and capture Elric to make him confess to his crimes. Or rather,
Well, the evidence doesn't matter. Once all the culprits are dealt with, the winners will write the story,
declared Testarossa. This was a clear statement that she intended to do exactly what the enemy planned. Testarossa, a demon unconcerned with ethics, believed that as long as she emerged victorious, she could dictate the narrative. It was a very Testarossa-like argument. Acknowledging it was a trap, Hinata and her companions proceeded to confront the enemy. Once outside the capital, the devastation was apparent. The royal castle at the city's center had partially collapsed, marring its once magnificent appearance. The aristocratic district, housing the capital and the Holy Church branch, fared slightly better, but the downtown area along the main street was engulfed in flames.
Prioritizing evacuation was necessary, but cleaning this up will be a nightmare.
More battles are inevitable, and there will be further destruction. With the king and his successor gone, Ingratia's recovery will be slow.
Nikolaus responded coolly to Hinata's observation. It was a detached reaction, uncharacteristic of a priest, but that was Nikolaus' typical behavior. For him, Hinata was the sole priority, nothing else mattered. His desire to serve Hinata drove him to rise to the rank of cardinal, second only to the pope. It was also why he accompanied Hinata, undeterred by danger. At this point, there were 5 in their group. Hinata, Testarossa, and Cardinal Nikolaus, who followed out of concern for Hinata, were joined by Moss and Cian, who had been summoned. They strategized as they moved toward their target.
Moss, focus on search mode, and prepare for any surprise attacks.
Understood.
Moss, ever the obedient subordinate, complied without question.
That's it for this video, guys. Thank you for always watching my videos and supporting my channel.